Ever since I first heard whispers about the XU20 V32, I've been watching this little device with a sort of fascination usually reserved for scrolling through Instagram to find those videos where people fall over. XURetro, I think it's pronounced Shu actually, but I'm westernizing it to Zoo rather than XU. I hope it's pronounced Zoo because that conjures up images of happy, well-fed animals, whereas XU sounds like something somebody would angrily shout at you in the street. XURetro are a fairly new company, boldly claiming that they could deliver a decent Android handheld experience for around $50. And at $50, you start using, for the price, as punctuation, so your expectations behave themselves. When my green translucent unit arrived, complete with its 64GB card that we will have words about later on, I felt that familiar mixture of excitement and trepidation that comes with unboxing any budget device. It's that same feeling you get when you press the Update Windows 11 button and hope that it's not going to destroy your hard drive. The XU20 V32 promises Android 10, a gorgeous 1024x768 touchscreen, the same one used in the ever-popular Trimui Brick, proving that good screens have a better social life than I do. Its emulation capabilities should handle everything up to PlayStation 1 with aplomb, but without a plumber, as those games don't seem to appear on the card anywhere. Or a joystick, actually. This is a completely stick-free unit, but not a joy-free one, as we'll soon see. The promise is that this can even venture into Nintendo 64, Dreamcast and PSP territory. Though trying to control some joystick games with a D-pad can be like trying to perform surgery with oven mitts. After extensive testing, I can tell you that this device is fairly enjoyable to use, but it's not for everyone. It's a handheld that requires you to understand exactly what you're getting into, and possibly more importantly, what you're not getting. It's something, I suppose, of a contradiction. It's a device with premium aspirations firmly planted in budget reality. It's almost like somebody who wears a dinner jacket to a picnic. So settle in, because we're about to explore whether the XU20 V32 represents a smart compromise or just proves that in the handheld world, you get what you play for. Okay, for the rest of this, I'm going to call this the XU20. And it's been causing quite a stir in retro gaming circles, and after spending some time with it, I can understand the appeal. The first thing that strikes you is its build quality, which shows up early and asks for a handshake. The shell feels substantially more robust than translucent plastic has any right to be. I'm not usually a fan of translucent plastics. They often make everything feel too much like a toy. But with this particular colour choice and the build quality, I can easily forgive it its trespasses. The vertical form factor is wonderfully nostalgic, if a little bit squashed, evoking memories of the original Game Boy. This is considerably more squat than most Game Boy clones, and as a result, it often feels like there's something missing from the proportions. It's like the rest of your hands are looking for something to do whilst your fingers are busy. But it's comfortable enough for the sort of gaming sessions that mysteriously stretch from lunchtime to breakfast the following morning. It might actually be a little bit more comfortable as a form factor than the Trimui Brick, as this unit is slightly wider. And that's going to be a personal preference, of course, and it depends on whether you feel that the Brick's controls are a little bit cramped. I know some people do, some people don't. Your mileage may vary. The controls are a bit of a mixed bag, actually. The D-pad uses a membrane design with a pronounced central pivot. It's functional and it works fine for most retro gaming, although it won't pass a certain 8-bit test that fans of Retro Gamecore swear by. If you're the type of retro gamer that needs perfect pixel precision for classic shooters or fighting games, this might not be your weapon of choice. And I have to admit, this is the one thing that I'm not a big fan of. But for many gaming scenarios, it's actually fine. I found it to be quite adequate when playing platformers like Aero the Acrobat, for example. The face buttons, however, are proper microswitches that deliver satisfying clicks with all the authority of a headmaster dismissing assembly. They're quite loud, mind you, so late-night gaming sessions might require some consideration for sleeping household members. Whilst I personally still prefer the Trimui Brick overall, that is really down to personal preference, and I can absolutely see some users preferring the XU20's button feel and the wider form factor. The shoulder buttons are clicky, again, a bit loud, but it's the sort of high-grade click that you might find on a Zippo lighter, not the cheap plastic clicking of a ballpoint pen. They're positioned well enough that you won't accidentally trigger them during normal gameplay, and the whole button assembly makes this feel like a premium piece of kit. There was, however, a little bit of a design flaw in early units, of which mine is one. If you press too hard on some of the face buttons, you can accidentally trigger the left shoulder buttons as well. This could be annoying, but in normal gameplay, you really shouldn't encounter this, unless you're a particularly aggressive gamer with your button presses. So aggressive, in fact, that you'd give the Incredible Hulk a run for his money. You do have to press quite hard to get this bug to appear. Units manufactured after August the 30th should be completely free from this issue, which shows that XURetro's willingness to address problems rather than ignore them is something that they clearly do pride themselves with. People in my situation have been offered compensation as well, which is a really nice thing to see. But here's where we need to address the elephant in the room. There are no analog sticks in this unit, and for a device powerful enough to theoretically run N64, Dreamcast, and PSP games, it is a little bit of a limitation. Now, you can turn on an analog stick emulation by pressing and holding the bottom button. And for single-stick games, that actually works incredibly well. This is not unfamiliar for people who have used similar devices before, and that part is a pretty good experience. The 3.2-inch IPS display with its 1024 by 768 resolution is nothing short of remarkable for a cheap device, a premium feature that almost feels unfair at this price point. There are substantial bevels around the screen, but before you worry about that, remember this is exactly the same screen as the one in the Trimui Brick, and those bezels are worth it to get that gorgeous image in the middle. The pixel density approaches 400 ppi, which means games look crisp enough to make you forget that you are playing on a $50 device. The 4:3 aspect ratio is perfect for retro gaming, and the overall visual experience punches way above its weight class. Performance-wise, the all-winner A133P chipset delivers exactly what you'd expect from the specifications. It handles 8-bit and 16-bit systems with a sort of effortless grace that's usually reserved for professional dancers. PlayStation 1 games run smoothly enough to impress. Nintendo 64 emulation is more hit and miss. Some titles run acceptably, some titles struggle, and the odd one or two stow away on a boat and head for Mexico. I had problems playing some PSP games, including Tekken 6, but a quick look at the configuration in PPSSPP shows you that it's set to 2x scaling. Dropping this back to 1x changed the game from stuttering to playable, and everything was fine. For N64, GoldenEye runs with some stuttering and slowdown, but it does remain playable. Even so, it's not the greatest of experiences. Even when games run well, the lack of analog sticks for certain titles means that this can be an exercise in compromise. It's worth noting that during extended gameplay, the device gets hot enough to double as a hand warmer. The XU20 has no active cooling, so this is something to factor in if you plan on longer gaming sessions or using more demanding systems. The heat may even affect performance over longer periods. Only time will tell if that ends up being an issue. I don't think it will, because other handhelds have the same sort of heat output. But for everyday gaming, this wasn't something that worried me. And the comfort of this device is going to depend on your tolerance for the heat that it kicks out. It was noticeably hotter than the Trimui Brick, for example, but I don't think it's a deal breaker. It's just something to be aware of. The 2 gig of RAM proves its worth when running Android, and the Android system itself opens up possibilities beyond simple emulation. And this is pretty remarkable. You're getting an Android device here with touchscreen functionality, Wi-Fi, for around $60 delivered with an SD card. That's pretty crazy value in today's market. And like all Android devices, you can install various emulators, configure RetroArch, run some Android games. The touchscreen integration works beautifully for navigation, making menu systems far more intuitive than button-only interfaces. The launcher itself takes absolutely ages to boot. It is an Android system after all. But if you're somebody who likes to pick up a device and start gaming immediately, you may be disappointed. Once it's running, it's perfectly functional, but that initial startup requires the sort of patience usually reserved for growing vegetables. There's also a sleep issue that you should know about, but it's one that is so easy to resolve, it's kind of not worth mentioning, but I wanted to mention it in this review. If your brightness is set too low, then the screen won't wake up from sleep mode. This is the same problem that affects MIUI on devices like the XU28. If this happens to you, you press the select button and the volume up button to increase brightness, and the device should wake up properly. Now, at the time of recording, they have just released an updated version of the firmware, which you can flash yourself, which fixes this problem. And this is one of the things I like about XURetro. They do seem to be quite hot on customer service. And I do have to give them credit for the way that they've handled both this and the button issue that I talked about previously. Of course, this is Android, and the expectation with these devices is that they will sleep for days without significant battery drain. Now, I don't have days to test this, so I left this on and in sleep mode for 10 hours, and in that time I had 4% of the battery depleted. Now, that's fairly good, but perhaps a little bit on the high side. I would have liked to have seen this cap out maybe around about 3% battery drain. But the one stone in the shoe here is the lack of Google Play Store. And that means that you need to rely on alternative app stores. Much like the Magic X040, a good option here is the Aurora store. But you have to be aware that any game that needs Google services will just not work on this device. There are some setup considerations to be aware of as well. For RetroArch users, be aware that the common hotkeys are not configured out of the box, so you'll probably want to set those up if you're used to quick access shortcuts from other devices. The G button serves as your home button. And it's incredibly easy to mistake this for the on button, which is actually round the back. A single press gets you into either RetroArch or the emulator that you're using, their settings, whilst a long press exits games and returns to the launcher. There's also a handy game switcher feature as well that lets you quickly return to recently played titles. The 64GB card actually comes with several paid Android games, including Balatro, Dead Cells, GTA San Andreas, Hollow Knight, Stardew Valley, and Streets of Rage 4. It also includes some paid emulators like My Boy, My Old Boy, and Yaba Sanshiro 2 Pro. These are legitimate commercial titles that really shouldn't be distributed in this way, and it's something that potential buyers should be aware of. What's particularly frustrating is that these Android games actually run incredibly well on the hardware. The performance is incredibly impressive, and including these does at least let Zoo show off their device. The ROM section itself appears to be better organised than most people's email boxes, but it does contain the odd duplicate or regional variation. Now, ethically, there isn't that much difference between sending out a card with ROMs on to installing a paid Android app, but the Android apps are in current development and available now, and I just don't feel comfortable with that. Whereas I'm not that worried when I'm trying to access a game that stopped being sold 30 years ago. And talking of SD cards, the device ships with a micro SD card that contains the entire Android operating system. These bundled cards are notoriously unreliable, and if this card fails, your device becomes a very expensive paperweight until you manually reflash the OS onto a new reliable card. Now, there's a link to download the stock firmware on the XURetro website. We have mentioned that earlier. It comes in 3 flavours, 32GB, 64GB, and 128GB, but I'm not sure whether or not it comes with all the games pre-installed as well. I haven't tried this myself, so you may lose your games if you find yourself doing it, and that means your first priority should be backing up that card and replacing it with a quality alternative. At least get something that's more reliable than the weather forecast, because without that functioning card, things will go downhill faster than a lost ski boot in an avalanche. The unit won't even boot, so you really do need to back up what they send you. If you don't know how to do this, please check the channel. I will try and upload a video before this one or just after that walks you through the process. One area where the XU20 shines is actually Nintendo DS emulation. The touchscreen makes this not just possible, but actually quite enjoyable, and the unit isn't too big just to slip in a pocket, and, you know, in a way that even the original DS can't quite match. You'll need to set up screen switching for each game, and to do that you press G, a single press of G, and then hit the screen switcher button, and then you can use the L2 button to toggle between the different screens. But once configured, you're getting a decent DS experience that other handhelds at this price simply cannot provide. You won't be able to play games that require you to use two screens at once, of course, but that's the trade-off that you have on all of the devices with this form factor. Outside of sleep mode, battery life settles into that comfortable middle ground of budget handhelds, approximately 5 to 7 hours, depending on what you're playing and depending on what screen brightness and other running tasks that are going on, and so on and so forth. The audio experience through the single front-facing speaker is surprisingly good, delivering clear sound reproduction without the distortion that often plagues most budget devices, certainly ones at this price point. The headphone jack provides the quality that you'd expect, and combined with Android, you've got yourself a capable little media player too. To understand where the XU20 fits, we need to consider its main competitors. Against the Miyoo Mini Plus, the XU20 presents an interesting alternative in a remarkably similar package. Both devices share that compact, pocketable form factor and similar height, making them natural competitors for the same pocket space. But where the Miyoo focuses on perfect retro gaming up to PS1 with whispered quiet controls that wouldn't wake a sleeping cat, the XU20 takes a more ambitious approach. It trades a little bit of that refinement for significantly more power, giving you access to at least some of the N64, Dreamcast and PSP libraries. The Trimui Brick shares the XU20's similar height and identical chipset and screen specifications, though it's noticeably narrower and more pocketable. The key difference becomes the XU20's touchscreen functionality, which gives it that DS emulation capability, Android games, and touch menu navigation. On the other hand, the Brick feels so much more premium than the XU20. It's night and day, in fact. Some people will find that the quality of the Brick will add enough to the gaming experience that it's worth picking that up over the XU20. And if I had to choose, well, I probably would do the same. But you can't fault the fact that this is significantly cheaper, and it's got that touch screen and the Android, and that may very well be your deciding factor. So where does this leave the XU20 V32? It's a device that I actually did enjoy using, but it's absolutely not for everybody, and I'm not going to be giving up my new Brick anytime soon. The screen quality alone justifies much of the asking price, and the Android functionality provides flexibility that Linux-based competitors just simply cannot match. The build quality does feel premium, though. Certainly a lot better than many handhelds at this price point. And when you're playing games that suit its control scheme, it's a really pleasant experience. But you need to understand exactly what you're buying. This device succeeds brilliantly as a budget Android handheld that punches above its weight in specific areas. But it requires you to embrace its contradictions. This is ideal for somebody who prioritizes Nintendo DS emulation and wants Android flexibility, but still wants pockets that don't drag their trousers down. It's perfect for somebody who appreciates the novelty and the convenience of a touchscreen for navigation and games, and understands and accepts that they're trading off optimal experiences in certain consoles in exchange for the device's unique strength. Ultimately, despite a few flaws, I keep coming back to one thing. At this price, there is nothing out there just yet that does exactly what this little device does. You're getting a good battery life, you're getting a more premium feel than similar devices, and access to a diverse library of games that should keep even the most hardened gamer busy for quite some time. It's pocketable, it's comfortable to play on, and the screen looks incredible. I can see myself using this over other devices that have found their way onto my shelf and cost significantly more. And in that respect, you have to conclude that this device has done what it set out to do. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more from XURetro in the future. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and if you'd like to see more of these sorts of videos, then please do like and subscribe. And do look out for that SD card backup tutorial if you need it. But that's it from me for this video. Until next time, when we embrace retro gaming once more. Happy gaming.